Greetings and welcome. Today we're going to be painting one of these three. I did three versions because I liked the first two, but I had this vision in my head and I had to see it through completely right. So I did it three times. I'm really happy with the last version. We're going to go over that one today. As per usual, if you have any questions, please let me know. And this is a cut-up lesson. This is like a 15-minute snippet of all of the really important pieces of the lesson, but if you feel like you want more, there is the full hour-long lesson up on Patreon along with the digital sketch if you want help with kind of getting all of the clouds in the drawing exactly right and just kind of jumping into that painting portion. Painting portion. Strange thing to say. You can actually find dozens of other hour-long lessons just like all of these up on the Patreon as well. There are over 30 at that tier now, so check it out. So anyways, I have a tendency to make these intros a little long, so I'm going to end that here. I truly hope you enjoy, and again, let me know if you have any questions. All of the digital sketches and that stuff is up on Patreon, and I'm going to grab a lot of titanium white paint and begin to apply that right between where we want our yellow and orange bottom of our sky and our blue top of the sky. This is going to be a transitionary area, and it's going to ensure that our yellows don't mix with our blues, which would make a lot of greens. And in this sunset, I want to avoid greens as much as possible, which means not allowing oranges and yellows to touch any type of blue. It will happen minorly, but we can cover that up with clouds and kind of ensure we get that the way we want. But with that being said, I'm now applying a good amount of primary yellow to where my sun's going to be, and I blended it up into the titanium white. Now I'm applying some red to both sides of the yellow and beginning to blend that in as well. Here the goal is to render a fairly smooth gradient from red on both sides into an orange, into a yellow, into a white yellow. And this is going to show a lot of color. It'll be really nice for our sunset, and it'll stand out in such a warm way. So now I'm grabbing a lot of a primary blue, and I'm going to begin applying this to the sky in the same way I did our initial applications. For the most part, I'm using a horizontal stroke, as you can see here, and I'm just applying more primary blue to the top areas. Around the middle of the sky, I'm going to actually take a lot of titanium white paint, as you can see here, and begin to incorporate that as well. I'm going to take more pure titanium white paint and begin to blend our pigments together. Here you can see the blue is touching the other pigments minorly. We are getting a little bit of green, but it would have been so much more substantial had we not incorporated that white initially. And you almost have that white dividing line, which looks really nice as well. Here I'm switching to my smaller round-headed brush. I'm ensuring that it is fairly damp, as we always do. Then I'm grabbing some primary blue, some primary red. I'm mixing a little bit of a purple here, as you can see. And then I'm going to begin applying this in the transition area. Now these are clouds, so we're using the smaller round-headed brush because of course it innately has the feathered rounded edges and it won't render a very sharp line, which isn't what we want for this type of subject. Here I'm mixing in a bit of a darker pigment. I'm introducing the Mars Black, and I'm building in the body of our cloud here. I'm trying to allow the edges to remain fairly bright, and I'm blending up into them. I'm doing so in the same motion and pattern that I was using before. It is a circular motion for the most part, and I'm trying to ensure that some portions are slightly darker than others. I don't want to get a flat, matte looking body for my cloud. Here you can see I'm moving down to the bottom, and I'm creating these little pathways for clouds that kind of roll into the distance. I'm doing this predominantly on the edges, the far left and the far right hand side of our sky, and I'm doing this because I still want to create more of that vignetting effect. Now we're going to begin working on some smaller clouds. And I'm going to do so with my smaller round-headed brush. Here you can see I'm grabbing a good amount of primary red, a little bit of primary yellow, and I'm going to work in some line-like clouds here at the bottom of the piece. These are going to be the ones that are much more transparent, that the sun is really soaking through, and they're a little bit farther away, so they're adopting more of that color in the atmosphere. Here you can see I'm grabbing some of our primary red and a lot of titanium white, and I'm mixing up a bit of a pink. This is going to be for clouds on top of our large dominant cloud. These ones are also going to be quite small, and they're going to act as leading lines that are going to direct the eye back down into the painting near the sunset. So here you can see that I'm just kind of continuously going back. For the most part, I am still working in a circular shape in these clouds. However, I'm occasionally using more of a horizontal and vertical application. From there, I'm going to do a couple of little birds. I'm doing this with Mars Black. I'm using my smallest round-headed brush, and I'm just creating two little lines. I'm trying to ensure that they taper off up where the wings are going to be, and I'm painting these very much in the same way you'd see a cartoon bird. Now, at this point, I'm very happy with my sky. We might go back and work on it a little bit later, but in the meantime, I'm going to work on my water. So I'm going to peel back the green tape that we have on the canvas and reveal an incredibly nice sharp line. If you want this tape, it's simply the green frog tape that you generally use for painting your walls and masking your ceilings. And I'm actually going to apply a second piece of green tape on top of my fully dry sky. It is imperative that your sky is 100% dry before you apply this piece of tape. Otherwise, you can really hinder your initial application. From there, I'm going to take a lot of primary blue, a small amount of primary red, and a small amount of Mars Black. I'm going to begin applying this in the middle of the water and blending it out. But it's a little bit too dark, so I decide to adjust it and add some titanium white. It's also a little too cool, a little bit too blue, so I grab some additional primary red and apply that back in there. Now the red's going to darken it, so I'm taking more titanium white and I'm applying that back in there as well. It's a real process of trial and error. I'm just trying to get a color that looks like it would be the combination of everything we have in the sky. So here you can see I'm grabbing more titanium white paint. I'm applying that around under my sun, and you can still see the sun through the frog tape. However, if you can't see it through your tape, I'd simply implore you to make a little mental note of where it is and then work from there. Here again, I'm using the sharper edge of the square-headed brush to show you what it would look like if you wanted to use more of a moving water, and then I'm softening it with the larger head to show you what it would look like if you want something that's a little bit more calm and a little bit more relaxing. Then I'm going to peel off the green tape, and as you can see there's a little bit of white in between that the tape kind of covered and I didn't get with either application of the top or the bottom. However, we can go back in and fix that fairly shortly, so don't worry about that. So from there, I'm going to switch over to my medium-sized square-headed brush, and I'm going to begin working in the silhouette of the ground here, which our tree, which will be perched in. Now, I'm using the square-headed brush because it does have a sharp edge, and that's fantastic for rendering subjects that have an innately sharp edge as well. Here you can see we're just blocking it in. We're using a bit of water so that we can stretch the pigment, but we're not using too much because then it will become transparent. Then I'm going to draw on the base for our tree trunk, and it's worth noting that you should generally begin your tree trunk by making it smaller than you think it will need to be, because we generally innately have a habit of making them much larger initially than they should be. So go small and then build outwards if you feel it's necessary. Then I'm going to begin incorporating some branches, which are going to follow the same rules, and no two branches are going to be the same. I'm incorporating them at different points in the tree. And because I wanted the tree to be very, very sharp, because I didn't want a toothy aesthetic, I began to use a lot of water in my mixture. And because of that, as you can see, portions of it are very transparent. And that means I'm going to need to let that dry and then go back in and add additional layering. Now here, I'm just creating additional little branches in our painting. And I'm doing that with the smaller square-headed brush. We needed to switch because the medium-sized square-headed brush, it simply rendered too large of lines. And you want to adjust your brushes for what they are best for. So it's also worth noting that you should ensure that your branches are occasionally overlapping one another. This is a three-dimensional subject. The branches aren't simply moving out horizontally and diagonally. They are moving forward and backwards, which you can't generally tell with a silhouette unless these things are intercrossing and changing. From there, I'm going to switch to my old square-headed brush. As you can see, you can make one fairly simply by just peeling back the bristles and applying pressure. Once you have something where the bristles kind of leaf off in varying directions, I'm going to grab more Mars Black, and I'm going to begin tapping this on to my canvas. Every time I make a tapping motion, we render a litany of different implications, and it's worth noting that you want to make sure that you're creating clusters with your foliage. You don't just want one large cluster. You don't want sporadic little pieces. You want areas that are more dense than others. You want these clusters to be in different shapes and sizes. You want diversity. I'm applying a good amount over in the top left-hand corner because I do want to vignette that corner yet again a little bit more. And as you can see, we're kind of moving around the tree. We're doing a little bit here, then a little bit there, then a little bit there. We're constantly trying to balance it as we build up the amount of foliage that we have in here. Now, I took a little break and I drew in a little bit of a swing with a black Sharpie marker. But we're going to go about painting that. So I'm grabbing my smallest square-headed brush, I'm grabbing some Mars Black paint, and I'm beginning with the seat because it's the largest area and it's a good place to just practice and ensure that our hand is going to be good and steady for the rope areas. Now you could leave them in black Sharpie as it will aesthetically match and look like the medium. However, I want to make my rope look a little bit more thick and I want to give it a little bit more of a texture. So I'll show you what I do to kind of instigate that. First of all, I apply a very small amount of pressure and I apply it in a vertical application like this. I touch it, I move up. I touch it, I move up. I'm never dragging the pigment because if you drag the pigment, the bristles on the brush can expand and I need as fine of an application as I can possibly get. Now here you can see that I'm going back to my smaller round-headed brush. I'm mixing up a bit of a lighter blue there, then I want to desaturate it. I get it to be a little bit darker, I get some water. I'm really working with this until I get a pigment that's close or similar to that of what we worked on in the clouds in the sky. And now I'm adding some additional detail in there and just making some areas simpler as well, more simple rather. And I'm doing this because, like we talked about earlier, the painting needs to balance itself. Now from there I mixed in orange. It's a red heavy orange with some titanium white. I'm using the old square-headed brush. That scared me. That was my phone going off. Oh my. But we're going to continue this take because timing. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Here I'm adding some additional orange into the water, and I'm just trying to brighten up the area underneath the sun. With the old square-headed brush, we're rendering a litany of different lines. They're all very sharp, and it makes it look like the water is just rippling with this highlight. and that's really, really nice. It's also not looking like a heavy green because remember that middle portion of the water was more purple heavy, and this application of orange is more red heavy. We're trying to avoid the yellows and the blues. Here, we're mixing up a bit of a purple, and I'm just trying to create a little bit of additional line work into our currently fairly stagnant water. Here I'm grabbing a little bit of additional titanium white, and this is just going to be the pieces that kind of noticeably sparkle in the distance and have a little bit of that extra magic. Here I'm getting some additional red, and I'm just trying to clean up the areas of white that we had down below that didn't get any coverage because of the tape. Then I'm also throwing some additional clouds into the other side because again they need to balance one another. I'm almost done. We're at the point where we're just doing small touch-ups. So this is a process that's really going to look different for every one of us. However, for me, it's going back and darkening a good portion of the clouds yet again. Hey there, it's Ryan O'Rourke. I truly hope you enjoyed today's little extra video. It was essentially a cut-up version of one of the many hour-long lessons which we offer over on patreon.com. Over there you'll also find digital sketches of the 10-minute painting lessons, digital sketches of these hour-long painting lessons, and a bunch of reference photos as well. So if any of that interests you, or if you just want to support the channel, go over there and check it out. It is a pleasure to make these long form videos, and I love to share them with all of you. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you next Saturday with a new video, and above all, as always, stay creative.